Welcome to Vibrational Revelations. My name is Elena.
My name is Alejandro.
And today's episode is about goddesses. Wow, I think we've been wanting to read goddesses from the moment we started this work. So I'm so happy to introduce you to our guest, Dr. Joanna Kujawa. And I'll give the introduction in a second. But Dr. Kujawa, let's start with that, is the author of The Other Goddess, Mary Magdalene and the Goddesses of Eros and the Secret Knowledge, scholar and spiritual detective. I love that, the spiritual detective. She received her BA and master's degree from Pontifical Institute of Medieval Studies at the University of Toronto in Canada, and her PhD from Monash University in Melbourne, Australia. So currently you're in Melbourne, Australia. As an active academic for over 20 years, she uses her scholarly training to investigate topics other academics often pass over, such as, can spirituality and sexuality be experienced as one? Who was the real Mary Magdalene? I have chills just reading it. Like, is there a lineage of goddesses now resurfacing in our collective experience of spirituality? And apart from her writings for academic publications on spiritual travel, Joanna has also had her short stories and essays published through the various media and in many prestigious anthologies, including Best Australian Stories, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, She Rises. She is on the editorial board of the International Journal of Goddess Studies. I love it. I cannot wait for people and for me to hear what you have to say. And I actually can't wait to order your book.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. It was such a pleasure to write The Other Goddess because I had so many inhibitions before, and when I decided, no, I'm just going to go with the energy, and it turned out to be a very pleasant experience. So I hope that the readers have the same experience.
Wonderful.
That's wonderful. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with our work, Alejandro and I have been reading people, places, events and situations throughout history, and we probably have had at least by now, definitely over 5,000 vibrational revelations that we've done. So quite an extensive investigative, I would say. So we're just like you, spiritual detectives, I would say. I love that terminology. And, the curiosity is taking us into so many places. And I'm so grateful that you've actually created this incredible list to explore all of the things I've been wanting to explore. And I'm sure our audience also, because we've had quite a few people ask us, can you reveal this person? Can you, or, this goddess and that goddess? So this absolutely is going to be one of the most exciting episodes for us to dive into.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Alejandro. And I'm really excited to know what you come up with, right? Because it's one thing to do research on goddesses, but the other one delves so deeply into this, the way you did. And I'm sure it was lots of work.
Yes, and people actually, so one thing you guys don't realize is actually Joanna has no idea what the numbers are. So you will find out the numbers today.
Yeah.
And that is going to be the same way for everybody else when the episode goes live. Now, we do use technology, scalar wave technology, to read the vibrational frequencies, right? And we dive in over 30 different categories, which gives you a very deep view, right? A lens into those characters. And that's going to be a very important aspect to establish. And, when we were reading the goddesses, we felt that absolutely some of these things are emerging, and you can see it actually emerging through social media, through a lot of the books that are written. And it will give you a deep, all of the listeners, and those that are watching, it will give you depth into perhaps what is it that wants to be healed and which aspects are truly in alignment and are absolutely divine and delicious, So we're calling this scale, because this is something that is emerging and is evolving as our work is evolving, the vibrational degrees of awakening.
Beautiful.
Yes. So take us on who is the first goddess that we're revealing?
I think that perhaps it is appropriate for us to start with goddess Ninmah,
Mm-hmm.
because she's an ancient Sumerian goddess, which, first time we heard about her is probably 4000 BC or BCE, before the Common Era, before Christ. And she's almost this original goddess, which was very in the West at least, which is always portrayed with her hand extended, giving the fruit of life and fruit of knowledge to humanity. And next to her, there is a tree of life and tree of knowledge with a upright serpent, and some people interpret it as either kundalini or DNA, rising. So obviously she's associated with many mythological stories, and also more alternative stories such as the Anunnaki and so on, as the goddess that somehow was um, associated with giving deeper wisdom to humanity. So I would like to know, whether what was her reading? Is she really this fantastic goddess, or maybe there's
Uh-huh. Let's find out. So here we are. This is the Revelations. So Ninmah, the goddess of wisdom. And it's fascinating because there is a couple of beings that we've revealed, and I think we've done one episode that we call avatars. Those are the beings that are coming in that are absolutely integrated beings, right? They come from, most likely from other dimensions. This is not an experience that they gain in this reality. So in the case of Ninmah, and again, the scale goes from 0 to 1,000, right? So 1,000 being a fully illuminated being. She came in, she incarnated at a frequency of 1,000.
Wow.
She was born at the frequency of 1,000. So again, this is a perfect representation of somebody who we can call an avatar. In this case, it's a goddess, right? And her overall frequency was a frequency of 1,000. Now, we're going to look at all the other aspects. She viewed health through the lens of 1,000. And health is body, mind, and soul connection. Finances, 250, neutrality, or another way we're referring to it is observation, right? Or objectivity. Creativity is all about what inspires a person, right? And what inspired her and how she was able to take action and create. And in her case, it's a frequency of 1,000.
Wow.
Amazing, right? Relationships she viewed through the lens of 1,000 also. Now, this is the interesting part, interesting point, personal growth, which is very much related to Mary Magdalene. We're not going to cover her today, but we've talked about her in the past, because personal growth for Ninmah is 0, and it's reference to the 0 point field. So she's the creator and then transmuter of whatever she was creating, right? Going into nothing and birthing out of nothing everything, right? At the same time.
That's super interesting. Because she's the creator goddess, right? So
Exactly. Philanthropy, 1,000. Intuition, 1,000. Now, we also have incorporated the different aspects of intelligence, the IQ, how she viewed intellect. And these numbers are slightly different than Mary Magdalene's numbers, but in her case, IQ she viewed through the lens of love, 500. EQ, the emotional intelligence, which we often reference to as far more superior than the intellect, right? It's the intelligence, the divine intelligence that flows through. And for her, it's 900, also the illuminated state. SQ, 1,000, the social quotient, right? How she felt being in the presence of others, right? And AQ, the adversity quotient. And for her, it was 700. Again, this illuminated way of being. Or dealing with challenges that came up. She 100% enjoyed her role. She was in her ego 17%, again, very similar number, or the same exact number as Mary Magdalene. Her inferior ego was 51, so pretty balanced. She was very present at 100%, integrity 100%, 100% in full integrity to herself and others. So she created at 1,000 frequency in full integrity, self-awareness and clarity, 100%. She was absolutely real, self-realized, actualized, alignment with divine purpose and personal purpose, 100%. compassion 100%, empathy 100%, energy purity 100%, and she embodied the 13th dimension. And this is where we're seeing actually avatars, what we call the avatars, are embodying that at 1,000 frequencies, the 13th dimension.
That's super interesting. Thank you so much. If I just comment, because,
Yes, please.
mythologies and stories, sometimes she's associated, with other beings. And in both stories, she had to fight them off, malevolent beings, because she wants to give this gift of humanity, the gift of wisdom to humanity. So she actually had to fight off malevolent beings, right? So she had to be completely in her integrity, to give this gift to us. It's almost like a creatrix. So that confirms the story. So that I'm really, really happy with this.
Oh, good. Okay, wonderful. All right, who's next?
What about Inanna?
Inanna. Alejandro will present Inanna.
So Inanna is, in mythology at least, she's slightly more controversial. She was, I don't know, we know of her about 2,500 year BC, also Sumer, Assyria. She was a goddess of all, but she just becomes slightly, at least in mythology, slightly less holistic. So it means she's a goddess of wisdom, she's a goddess of war. She also was the goddess who stole the magic from someone else, the magic of, and to create culture. So there's some kind of almost mischievous element, at least in the stories, to her. And she went to the underworld because she was tricked to go underworld, and she was told that she would be safe there. Just she went for some god's funeral, but once she went to the underworld, she lost all her power. She was stripped of her power. She had to face her shadow, and again, through trickery and magic, and help from other beings, she returned to the surface, but she sacrificed her lover. So in this way, because he usurped the power that was hers when she was in the underworld. So now she is still the queen, she's still the goddess, but her lover has to go for 6 months into the underworld, so to speak, as a price that he has to pay for the betrayal and also for her redemption from the underworld. So it is, and it's also a very sensual goddess. So there are beautiful poems written by her priestess about the sensual love that she enjoyed, and what I call sexual alchemy with her lover Dumuzio. So that's the story. Now I wonder what her readings are.
It's so fascinating. Actually, when we read some of the people, I had chills like a couple of times. And as you're speaking, it's like it's so on point, like what we're about to share. It's unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
Yes. It's so on point if we're open to make the necessary adjustments in order for the frequencies which represent the way the being, in this case Inanna, processed the information that she perceived, right? So, and then if we start from that point of view, then it is easier to incorporate that into the story that you just shared with us, right?
Okay, yes.
So now, Inanna, holistic goddess of resurrection, that's what we wrote here,
Yes.
Incarnated at the frequency of 400, which is the level of analysis, right?
Very intellectual.
Intellectual, yes. And was born at the same frequency, 400 as well. Her overall frequency was 400. Yes, so very consistent. Now, she viewed the aspect of health through the lens of 400 as well. Finances, 200. That is the level of heroism, really the bridge from when one begins to, has just passed or transcended the victimization range of degrees, or gone from the force end of the spectrum over the power end of the spectrum, right? When it comes to creativity, 400.
So mind.
Yes, created, very, very analytical mind. Relationships, 400. Personal growth, 400. Philanthropy, 200. Intuition, 400. And with an intuition, we have clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, and claircognizance at 400, all of them.
So she's like a very analytical being.
Yes. And when it, now about the intelligence aspect, we have IQ, 250. Yes, that is the objectivity.
Yeah.
Yes. EQ, 200. SQ, 400. And AQ, the adversity quotient, 200. Now, we go into percentages from 1 up to 100%, right? In the joy, as of how much Inanna was enjoying the role that she played in this reality, was a 100%. So she was having fun with her role. In the ego, how much she paid attention to information, to thought, right? And was for 100%, which it makes total sense because she incarnated at 400, was born at 400, and her overall frequency was 400, so very analytical mind, right?
And the ego frequency we measured a while ago, that's 400.
Oh, wow.
100% in that.
Exactly, because it's linked to the intellect, right? And 80% of that 100% in the ego, represents the superior version of the ego, in her case, yes? Now, in the now, how much time she spent in the now, in the present moment? 51%. Integrity, how loyal and faithful Inanna was to her truth, 69%. And was 100% to self, and integrity to others was 54%.
So that's very much in alignment with what you shared, actually.
Yes, I just actually, it confirms what I felt completely.
Exactly.
So, and because I said, that's why I said at the beginning a little bit mischievous, and I'm not surprised at this analytical intellectual element with her, because she was using magic, higher magic, but she was using magic, and she definitely enjoyed her role. She really loved being the goddess, right? So
yes,
but slightly lower on the scale than Ninmah, right? It's just I felt
Totally
it.
different.
Yes, definitely, totally different.
Yeah.
When it comes to self-awareness, 91%, clarity, 97%. So she was very clear about her vision of her overall perspective of life and the path she was on. Alignment with divine purpose was 80%. And this could have been impacted by when you share the story that she somehow, you said that she was convinced that she needed to go underground and
in the underworld,
the underworld, right?
Yes.
That was definitely, based on the numbers, against to what her divine role was, right?
That's right.
Alignment with personal purpose was 100%. Compassion, 50%. So
yes, she sacrificed her lover, right?
Exactly,
there you go.
Exactly. Yes.
This is fantastic. I love these confirmations.
And when we have someone that has 100% in the ego and 80% in the superior version of the ego, with low numbers in compassion, like in her case is at 50%, more often than not, that being has narcissistic tendencies, if it's not a full-blown narcissist. Empathy, 72%. Energy purity, 82%. This is how much she was embodying the 400 frequency. And when it comes to dimensions, we measured in the 0% under the fifth dimension. So she was between the
third and fourth.
Yes.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you for this. And again, it confirms my feeling or intuition or my research about her, because Ninmah is almost like a divine being. But Inanna felt like she was more embodied in the earthly dimension, right? And she loved her role, like she was like full-on goddess of this narcissism, right? But she really loved the part of being a goddess more than maybe doing the good. When Ninmah incarnated to to give us knowledge or wisdom, which is bigger than knowledge, right? To give us gift of life and a gift of evolution. When Inanna felt like, I'm 100% goddess and I'm going to enjoy my part, kind of thing. So this actually completely confirms. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay, next one.
So what about, perhaps you could discuss Hathor.
Okay.
Hathor is an ancient Egyptian goddess which predates Isis. And sometimes, they are mixed later, but let's not get into this. But when she was a goddess, she was very much a goddess of sensuality, sexuality, but also of fertility, right? So if people wanted to have a good harvest, she was the one that they would pray to. But she was also a very playful goddess. She was, and from what I understand from mythologies, she enjoyed, being that goddess. There's this full-on sexual goddess of fertility, and lots of enjoyment there.
Okay, fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Confirmations coming up. So I love it. She incarnated at the frequency of 200, which is heroism. Born at the frequency of 50, and 50 is indifference.
Okay.
And her overall frequency was 200, again, heroism. She viewed health, which is body, mind, and soul connection, at the frequency of 250. So 250 is the frequency of being objective, right? So very neutral. Finances, she viewed through the lens of 125, which is very impulsive lens. So there was impulsivity linked to that. Creativity, she created through the lens of 400. Intellect, very intellectual creation, again, mind. Relationships, she viewed through the lens of 50, indifference. And oftentimes, when we see this combination with several other numbers, we'll reference it back, but this is also a frequency of manipulation.
Well, this is the seductress comes, right?
The seductress, there you go.
Right?
Yes. Personal growth, she viewed through the lens of heroism, 200. Philanthropy, the art of sharing and giving, 200 again. And intuition, 175. And again, intuition is not about how intuitive someone is, but when information comes through, what lens she used to process this information. In her case, it was 175, which is vanity. It's very,
She was very vain, yes.
There you go. You just confirmed it. I love it.
She was a vain, beautiful goddess, so. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So, and for all four aspects of intuition were all vanity, 175. Now, looking into her intellect, the IQ, how did she process the information based on the intellect? And it was 250. She viewed it very objectively. EQ, as we said earlier, which is far more superior, is the emotional intelligence. It's 125. So again, this impulsive way of viewing, right? SQ, social quotient. And this is fascinating because you see her frequencies of, we said relationships 50, right? She has the 125, 175. And this is her charisma in a way. It's her magnetism because this is 500. So she used her social quotient to lure people in through her appearance. Okay, well, yes, we didn't know about these goddesses. So I'm like, of course, Now, AQ, the adversity quotient. How did she deal with challenging situations? And for her, it's 50. Again, 50 is this disassociation, disconnect, indifference, right? It was like a way of escaping reality. Now, she enjoyed her role 88%. She was in her ego 100%. And out of that, 100% superior, as Alejandro said, in combination with low EQ, low frequency in relationships. And we'll talk about her compassion. She definitely was more of a narcissist or had narcissistic tendencies. In the now, 95%. Integrity, 93%. Integrity to self, 97%. Integrity to others, 62%. So that's where that seductress manipulation would come through. Self-awareness, 92%. So she was very aware of what she was doing. Clarity, 94%. Alignment with divine purpose, 70%. So she was out of alignment. Alignment with personal purpose, 100%. compassion 64%, so not very compassionate, with 15, right, and low EQ. Empathy 90. So she used empathy as a navigation system, like a radar in a way,
Yes.
right, to read others. Energy purity 65%, and again, she was not in the fifth dimension. So this is, as you would reference, the goddess that was between third and fourth dimension, or perhaps even lower because she had lower numbers.
Thank you. But again, like, it confirms what I have learned about her, because when, just for your listeners and viewers, I always think about her as, Marilyn Monroe, diamonds are girls' best friends, kind of, or Madonna, material girl. And when you said she used empathy to read people, this is how I see exactly how she would act, because Inanna used magic, but this one would use, okay, what will work with him, right? What would work with her? And definitely vain and enjoying, the goddess part of herself. So sometimes, again, like with Inanna, but a lower level again, I would say that perhaps some incarnated beings, like goddesses, perhaps they enjoyed their embodiment in the material world, in this dimension, so much that they went out of alignment, as you call it, with a divine purpose, because they came here to do good, let's say, and then they thought, I can just have lots of fun here. And then, and I have all of these powers and they don't even know it, right? I can be worshipped. So this is Hathor, right, to you. So this is Hathor to you.
Fascinating.
And that happens and will continue to happen. The people come here for the sake of the experience and to learn different lessons, and somehow they decide to deviate away from the lesson.
That's right, because it's beautiful, it's sensual, our world, right? It's full of temptations, and if you incarnate with superior powers, by superior not necessarily spiritually superior, but either you have magic or you have this empathy that you can read other people, you think like, actually I can just use it for my own benefit, so I can be worshipped, I am a goddess, right? This is Hathor to you, right?
Right, exactly.
Yes.
So it's actually funny, but yeah, absolutely confirms my research. Thank
And
you.
when we were reading these goddesses, I said to Alejandro, a lot of it is actually being brought to the surface at this time through so many different people, right? And it's so predominant with social media too, like you can clearly see it, like the desire that women have to dress up and embody these energies, right? It's almost like she's living through many.
Yes. And if you want me to say something about it, I think this is coming up to surface because our consciousness has to embrace also this different part, the feminine part of consciousness, right? Because we live in a more masculine part of consciousness, which is more logical, mathematical, and it has nothing to do with gender, by the way, right? So it's not men, women. And I think for us to fully evolve, we have to bring these two polarities together. But before we bring them together, one has to be fully acknowledged, the other one, which is the feminine, with all of the, light and dark of it. Yeah, like
That's right.
Yeah. So Hathor was not really harmful, but she was all about herself, right? So,
Yes. Oh, this one will be interesting. Let's dive into Isis.
Yes.
Isis. Yes. So Isis is a very complex goddess because at the beginning she was associated with Hathor, but then she actually has much more depth. But this depth is sometimes interpreted as good or bad, although most of the time in a positive way, because she is also a goddess of highest magic. So it means she used not the kind of magic that humans use, like in witchery or something, that you use natural elements, but through the power of the words, she could actually change the cosmic quantum reality, so to speak. So almost like she could change the reality. So she was speaking straight to the divine consciousness, so to speak. And she was also responsible for partial and very brief resurrection of her husband, Osiris, when he was killed by his brother Seth. She actually used her magic to bring him back to life for a moment so she could conceive a child, Horus together.
Weren't they brother and sister also? They were brother and sister, right?
This is in the Egyptian mythology is quite common because they, like the pharaohs, they married each other, sisters and brothers, right? So it's a taboo in our culture, but not in ancient Egyptian beliefs and culture. So they're also brother and a sister. So there is this interesting thing about Isis, if you allow me for a moment. Then she started to be associated, especially with the Roman Empire. She was very popular in the Roman Empire with ancient mysteries, but also she became like a mother goddess, which later was transformed into Virgin Marian Catholicism, like the Holy Family, Isis, Osiris, and Horus. And then it became, you know, the Trinity in Catholicism. But so this is like they said the more spiritual part of her. But the other part of her was the magic, and it was taken in Europe and in Celtic cultures and other cultures as witchery, right? So playing with natural elements to achieve what I want to achieve, and sometimes also playing with death and life, right? So she's a very complex goddess. So I'm really especially curious about her readings because they could be either very good or very bad or very mixed. So
you know what? She was one of the goddesses I also could not wait to explore, and it is fascinating. The findings are going to be fascinating. And I will say one thing, that her energy frequency blueprint is very different from Mother Mary, completely different, just so people understand, because we didn't do it publicly.
Yes, yeah, extreme opposites.
Extreme, polar opposites.
Mm-hmm.
So the image might have been manipulated, you know, by Roman Empire, right? So this and that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Right. Yes, Isis. So goddess of resurrection and magic, right? Incarnated at the frequency of 125, which is the frequency of impulsiveness, right? Was born at the frequency of 125, and her overall frequency was 125 as well. Yes, this unfulfilled desire, right?
Addict. This is actually a frequency, a perfect frequency. We've revealed quite a few people that are alive or have been alive in the last century. And this is a perfect example of an addict. Okay.
And obsessive.
Obsessive personality.
And not only throughout history, we have read a few thousand people that are still living, right? And we've done their lifetime frequency analysis, and we go back in time, and when they have experienced the 125, they confirm that they were going through a period of unfulfilled desires and addictions and so forth. Now, she viewed health through the lens of 125. The health is the mind, body, and soul connection, right? Finances, 125. Creativity, 125.
So she created from the place of, from an addiction, desire place, right? Very impulsive.
Relationships, 50. Yes. Indifference or manipulation in this case. Personal growth, 125. Philanthropy, 125. Intuition, 125. And within intuition, we have all aspects, clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, and claircognizance at 125. Under the intelligence aspect, we have IQ at 175.
So vanity.
Yes, that's the level of vanity, right? EQ, emotional quotient, 50. Again.
Totally disconnected from the emotions.
The relationships, right? Indifference. SQ, 500. So she had this magnetism, right? To
lure people in.
And yes. Exactly, right? So many can, it's still happening nowadays, right? With many people, they have a high number under the SQ, like in the case of rock stars.
Yeah.
We have measured those, they vibrate, let's say at
125
30, even 30, and they incarnated at 50, were born at 50, and now they're at 30 or 50, but they have 700 under SQ, you know?
Charisma, really, the charisma.
The charisma, magnetism, yes, exactly.
Yes.
Under AQ, the adversary quotient, 50, so which is the same as Hathor. Hathor's AQ, right? The indifference. Unattached as well, unattached from emotions, right? That's a coping mechanism. Now we go into percentages. Indie Joy, 98%. So she was definitely
having a blast
with the role that she was playing. And when she was embodying it fully. In the Ego, 100%. And 100% of that was the superior version of the ego. In the Now, 95%.
Fully present for her experience.
Integrity, 96%. So she was loyal to her truth. Integrity to self, 100%. Integrity to others, 35%. Self-awareness, 98%. Clarity, 99%.
She was master. These numbers are master numbers, like somebody who really
embodied it fully and have mastered that level of 125, right? And alignment with divine purpose, 100%. And alignment with personal purpose, 100% as well. So we compare divine purpose to self-realization. So we can say that she was fully realized, came to play this role, and she played it very well. And personal purpose, we compare that to self-actualization, right? So she felt that like she accomplished everything and had the sense of fulfillment, right? Compassion, 68%. Empathy, 85%. Energy purity, 99%. And in her case means that she was just embodying the 125 to almost to the fullest, right?
And 0 and 5th dimension.
And 0 and the 5th dimension, yes. So she was between, I would say, the 2nd and the 3rd.
So she's really in the series of goddesses that basically enjoyed that part a little bit too much and manipulated it. But the numbers, so it's very interesting for me because, as I said when I was introducing her, she could be very good or very mixed bag or, not really good because she's worshipped by many people, but she's primarily a goddess of magic. And she didn't use the resurrection, but for her own purpose. So she resurrected because she wanted the man, that was killed, and she wanted to have a child with him. So it was, for her own benefit, so to speak.
Yes.
Humanity, she didn't do it for the wealth or for human evolution or planetary evolution.
But she could have been pregnant before and just made up that story too.
maybe that somehow I don't think so, because she was big on magic, so she was manipulating the elements. And again, the story, that's why I thought that she could have been another incarnation of Inanna, because there's the same story of her stealing the power of magic from another god. So she can use it for her own benefit. So that's why I think it's almost like the same goddess, Inanna, incarnated again, and just that she was more and more attached to, this lower dimensions, I would say, right?
We have, so far, it is a possibility because we don't have all the answers. The more we learn, the more we realize that there's a lot more to learn, right? But so far we haven't found someone that goes backwards in when it comes to frequencies, evolution. If you exit at 400, you more than likely come back at maybe 350,
but usually
310, or 400, and then to experience and continue to evolve and experience more spiritual growth, in higher frequencies.
Well, that's interesting. So people either evolve, but they don't really devolve, right? The beings.
Exactly.
Okay. I see. So that's interesting for me. It's an interesting information because there were lots of similarities there. And
they do have similarities.
They do.
Yes. Yes.
Relationships, both are at 50. Yes.
AQ the same, I think.
AQ the same.
Integrity not as high. I mean,
in the ego, both 100% and 100% in the superior.
Yeah, they do have similarities.
Now Isis has a much lower integrity to others, so she could have been definitely manipulating the elements which were used to view what she was presenting.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Who's next?
Next, we have Sophia.
Sophia, again, a very interesting and a mixed goddess. She's a Gnostic goddess, often associated with Mary Magdalene. But she is, so her story is just very briefly, she was in higher dimensions, basically the Gnostic story, because they use this terminology and the different words, but in the different eons. And she decided because either of curiosity or some kind of something seduced her from below, from lower dimensions, and she fell into lower dimensions, basically. And once she was in the lower dimensions, including ours, right? Because she fell into our dimension, she forgot who she was. She completely forgot who she was. She forgot her divinity, and that's why sometimes people say it is a metaphor for the journey of human soul, right? Because we forgot who we are, and she forgot who she was, and sometimes even they say to that degree that she became a prostitute to earn a living. But very often it is explained that it's a metaphor, meaning that it's a metaphor for her forgetfulness. She forgot her divinity, so she prostituted herself in a way, like living in a way that is not appropriate for her, because she's a higher being, she's a higher soul, but she forgot about it. And it's in a way a beautiful story of romance between Christ consciousness and Sophia, because in the story, Christ consciousness, sees her there, like a divine consciousness sees her there and descends to bring her back to her proper dimension, much higher dimension, when she was one with the one, but now when she realizes who she is, she only half of her consciousness goes back with Christ consciousness to the divine consciousness, and half of her consciousness stays here, because out of compassion for humanity, because now she knows what it means to be forgetful of your divinity.
That's so beautiful. I have chills all over again. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And
yes, that's what we could call a hero's journey.
She went through a hero's journey.
Yes.
So here's the interesting thing, and I think it's important to also differentiate. Her frequencies were completely different than Mary Magdalene's, completely different. And it is also, I would say, it's important for people to realize that she was her own unique being, having
her own experience.
Okay. And it doesn't mean we're taking away her, whatever she was before she incarnated, but she incarnated at the frequency of 500, which is love.
Flow, full,
yes, so flow. She was born at the frequency of 500, which we call flow, and her overall frequency was 500. Okay. She viewed health through the lens of 500, finances 250, so very objective, creativity 540, so blissful. This is a blissful frequency. So she created through the lens of, I would say, childlike lens.
Yes.
Very playful. Relationships she viewed through the lens of 500, which is again that state of flow. Personal growth she viewed through the lens of illumination. So these are the higher frequencies, 700 to 1,000. Philanthropy 500. She was a very loving being. Intuition 400, which is again this analytical way of perceiving information. And maybe that's the part that she was forgetting, right? And trying to reconnect. Clairaudience 400, clairsentience, which is feeling in the body, that was 500. So she was in the flow there. And then clairvoyance and claircognizance 400. Again, she was employing that analytical, intellectual way of processing information or processing intuition. IQ 250, EQ, emotional intelligence 350. So again, her emotional intelligence was definitely higher. SQ, and that's her level of magnetism, 700. So people perceived her as an illuminated being. And her AQ, adversity quotient, is heroism. So again, she had to awaken to her own, as Alejandro just said, hero's journey, to recognize, right? And awaken to parts of herself. She enjoyed her role 100%.
Okay, that's good
And that's perhaps why part of her decided to stay here. Her ego was at 72%. And out of that, 86% inferior. So this is where she probably felt like she wasn't good enough. And that was her hero's journey, right? In the now, 90%. Integrity, 100%. She was in the integrity 100% to herself and others. Beautiful.
That's beautiful, yes.
So beautiful, right? Self-awareness, 99%. Clarity, 100%. She was 100% in alignment with her divine and personal purpose. Compassion, as you said, she had this compassion also for humanity, 100%. Empathy, 100%. Energy purity, she embodied the 500 frequency at 100%. And then as far as dimensions, she experienced seventh dimension 86% of the time. So yeah, she was definitely connected to higher realms. It's beautiful.
That's a fantastic reading, because I think that she's sometimes misunderstood simply because of her fall, and people keep focusing on her fall. People who study Gnostic writings, but the truth is, it is a very beautiful journey. And as I said, it's kind of signifies our journey. We forget.
Right.
Get caught up in stuff, stupid stuff when you look at it, right? And devote our lives to this, and then we awake, and this is what she represents. And when she awakes, she doesn't just go away, right? She just says, no, I have to help people, because I now know how it is to forget who you are.
So beautiful. Yes.
Osho, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact quote, but he said that only stupid people don't make mistakes.
That's right. And this is her case, And I like also the fact that you said, because I said she fell from higher dimensions, and you said, well, yeah, actually she was in the seventh dimension, right? And just the curiosity or even compassion. Sometimes people say, moved by compassion, she just looked down and she said, what's there, right? And then once she was attracted to this, she fell into this, right? So
yes, but she we read her and I thought, wow, like this is really just embodiment of flow and love, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So it's a beautiful, I'm really happy with this reading. Yes, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
The beautiful thing is that we've done the readings without having any really solid foundation,
because it's not our area of expertise. Like it is for you.
Really, okay, the name and just diving into it without having any
ideas,
preconceived ideas about where they're at or what they've done or whatever the case might be.
So that's fantastic. So it actually is a confirmation of your method, And for me, I'm really amazed actually by the fact that, she did fall from another dimension, and this is where you're telling me she actually belongs to a different dimension, which is the biggest part of her story, really, right? And her compassion also, it's also the biggest part of her story. So
her integrity too, right? Her integrity, 100% to others.
Yes, so because she did it for us from the beginning to the end, right?
Yeah, so there's a drastic contrast, like as we revealed, Isis, right? Isis versus Sophia. You can see, right? Doing something for self versus I'm here for others, right? For the collective.
That's right. I'm not here to play a goddess, right? I'm just I came, because out of compassion for the beings here.
Amazing. All right, next one is Helen of Tyre. This was a fascinating read, actually.
Yes, I'm quite disappointed, actually.
No. But please introduce her and then we'll reveal her.
Okay. Actually, Helen of Tyre is really a human being. So would you like to proceed in this show with her? But she's also associated with Sophia, so that's why I put her there. But Helen of Tyre was supposed to be an essential partner of Simon the Magician, who was a contemporary of Yeshua or Jesus. So except that he was a much more radical one. So he was like, if Yeshua was very modest, he was like very a showman. So he definitely had the insight, he had the skills, but that's why he was called the magician. And some people thought that he was also a divine being. That's why I put her there, and that she was a divine being. But my friend Miguel Conner, who is like, he knows everything about Gnosticism. He said he said that if Mary Magdalene and Jesus were like the Beatles, you know, meaning like they're really all about good stuff. Helen of Tyre and Simon the Magicians were like the Rolling Stones. So they were not going away from the darker, you know, more radical side of things.
So we read The Magician, but we read
The Magician, and he loved doing the tricks when Jesus was very reluctant, right? Like he said, this is not what my ministry is about, right? I'm not here to
be a show or showman.
I want you to grow. My peace I give you. When Simon said, "Sure, I will show you a trick." Because I have the power, you know. I have the power.
He was more playful. Perhaps he was more playful, you know. And sometimes we expect the person to behave a certain way, you know. We see a priest. I would have seen a priest growing up in Catholic school, you know, happy and jumping. I say, oh, something wrong with the priest, you know. That's right. Maybe he was a priest that was vibrating very high. He was just full in his joy, you know.
That's right. That's right. So he went for it. He went for it.
That's right.
He had fun. So yeah, that would be an interesting person to read.
To measure Simon, yes. But as you were sharing the story that. I mentioned Yeshua, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to love what is about to unfold.
Okay.
Helen of Tyre, right? Yes. Incarnated at the frequency of 1000. Wow. Was born at the frequency of 1000 and vibrated at the frequency of 1000.
So you can call her an avatar.
So this is what we just categorized or classified as an avatar, right? A fully integrated being. Yes. So what they're experiencing pretty much no resistance. Everything just flows. Click and information is transferred faster than the speed of light, you know? Viewed the aspect of health through the lens of 1000. So fully illuminated, we can say. Finances, 400. Which is the same number. Should I say?
You can say
at the end.
Wait till the end. We're going to reveal whose numbers she has.
So finances 400. That is the analytical way of viewing the aspect of finances. Mm-hmm. Relationships 1000. Mm-hmm. Personal growth 0. Yes, the 0 point field. Mm-hmm. Right, a fully integrated being that is capable of just create with think it and gets created, right? We're all creators, and the only thing that sets us apart from doing that is the resistance, right? Tied to emotions. But she didn't have any of that. Philanthropy, 1000. Intuition, 1000. And within intuition, we have clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, and claircognizance at 1000 as well. Wow. So it was a clear channel, you know, of the divine, of divine information. Under the intelligence aspect, we have IQ at 1000, EQ 1000, SQ 700.
It's very magnetic too.
Yes, and AQ 500. So in moments of adversity or challenge, it was in the flow, right? Mm. In the joy, 100%. In the ego, 17%. And it was well balanced because it was 50% in the inferior and 50% in the superior, right? So balance each other out, pretty much cancel each other out in a way. In the now, 100%, so fully present. Integrity, 100%. Integrity to self, 100%. And integrity to others, 100%.
Fantastic.
Yes. Self-awareness, 100%. Clarity, 100%. Alignment with divine purpose and personal purpose at 100%. Compassion, 100%. Empathy, 100%. Energy purity, 100%. And in her case, she was experiencing the 13th dimension
Wow.
100% of the time.
This
So
is
it was,
the avatar
that is,
level.
you can say, experiencing Christ consciousness to the fullest.
My goodness. So this is actually very surprising. Thank you. Because we don't know that much about her, just because in times she lived, it was all about to whom you were married, right? So she was the partner of Simon the magician. This is what we know about her. But Simon the magician thought that she was what he called her, she was my Sophia. That's why I put them together, right? So she was this goddess that was actually inspiring him, and they were going around, together. But the spotlight was on him, so to speak, because this is how the news were written in those days, right?
Exactly.
The woman was just the one behind the man, right?
Right.
So, but he said, like, she's my Sophia, basically. So for him, these two were one.
His humanness thought that she was.
Well, we'd have to check him.
Well, in order to say she's my Sophia, but what I was saying is that his perception was that so he knew that Sophia was a goddess, right? Was known as a goddess, and therefore felt that she was also a goddess, right? But didn't know that she was actually an avatar, right?
Yes, no, but all he knew it is that she's this embodiment of wisdom, in his life, and the life can actually operate, right? So and this is what Sophia meant for him, but perhaps he didn't mean it literally, like Sophia, the goddess Sophia, but like she's my Sophia, like she's my goddess, right? She's
right, yeah.
And so just for people who want to know, her numbers are identical to
Mary Magdalene's
numbers.
That's really interesting. Now I love it because, as I said, sometimes history works in funny ways, especially mythology. So Yeshua and Mary Magdalene are portrayed in one way, and Helen of Tyre and Simon the magician the other way. And I sometimes wonder, what's the difference, except that one is almost like written by radical news reporter, and the other one, it's like a family edition. You know what I mean? So really, like Mary Magdalene, Gnostics very often said that Mary Magdalene from Yeshua is what Helen of Tyre was for Simon. But whether they are the same or or different.
They'd be the same. I have a feeling they're the same.
I have a feeling also they could be the same. He was just portrayed as not to be the same because he was probably more joyful and
or maybe that's how they wrote it.
Just a different expression of her, and maybe a different edition, like.
Right, exactly.
But now I'm so curious to read him. Like when we read her, I thought,
I can't wait to do that.
All right, next one is the esoteric Hindu goddess Uma.
Yes. So Uma is a very ancient Hindu goddess, and first time that we know of her in a written form. So, there's also a longer oral tradition, right? Because by the time the culture started to write down things from 1000 BC or BCA, before Christ. And she is also known as the goddess that explained the nature of the universe to the other gods. Wow. And to humanity. But actually she was the teaching goddess there, so to speak. By teaching, it is like other gods would ask her questions and she'll say, well, this is how it works. So she was explaining the nature of the universe. But we know of her very little because she is so ancient, and then later in Hindu scriptures, her part was reversed. So she changed into Shakti. So she was asking questions to Shiva. Do you understand? So they put Shiva on top. But originally it was Uma who was giving the answers. Do you understand? But was this reversal? So she's this first goddess that I ever came across, but she's the one that, well, I will tell you how the universe works, basically, right? So ask me. No, she's not there to show, from what I know. Right? She's not there to show her knowledge, but they said, Goddess Uma, what do you think about that? It's kind of teacher-disciple. And then she says, well, since you asked, right, I'm going to tell you how the universe is structured.
As you talk about her, I'm getting
Yes.
So I think I see her like processing this higher level of information, but you know, we know very little about her, so I'm really curious, you know, what you came up with, right? Because there are all kinds of projections also on goddesses,
So
right?
here, and this is, I think today's episode also is going to clarify what is truly the goddess, fully embodiment of goddess frequency. And then we're all gods and goddesses. And this is, I think, the most important message for humanity, for those that are listening, that it's not about worshiping somebody, but really connect and worship yourself, right?
Because we're all
Yes.
God carriers, right?
Yes. But now, information about Uma. She has identical frequencies to Mary Magdalene and Helen of Tyre, identical.
Amazing.
So this is why I say this is the true embodiment of that.
Yes.
Avatar, 1000 frequency, all the numbers are identical, 13th dimension at 100%. So everything that we just revealed to you about Helen of Tyre and the Mary Magdalene, as we mentioned, this is identical blueprint.
That's fantastic, because this is how, you know, my research basically confirms that I see her almost like sitting there and her head is like in a different dimension, you know, because she has access to knowledge that even other lesser gods, you know, who incarnated on lower levels didn't know. And she says, well, since you ask, okay, this is how it is. But it's very compassionate that she's not showing off her knowledge, and she answers only, you know, questions. Okay, since you really want to know, you know, divine consciousness works like that. Since you really want to know, this is the structure of the universe, you know. So she conveys knowledge there. So she almost, when you see this ancient Hindu depictions of deities sitting and there is a like light coming out of her head, this is how I always imagine her, you know. But she was not, I don't know if it's possible, because, you know, you're really, you know, experts in this, but almost like barely embodied, you know, like she was really in a different dimension. She was just able to communicate with us and somehow physically.
Yes.
That's possible.
Yes. And then the part where you described how she will answer the question, you know, whatever she was being asked, it matches that frequency, you know, to where it's just, okay,
It's just being.
Right. Allowing everyone to have their own experience without forcing anything, right?
That's right. And this is what also, thank you, Alejandro. And this is what Elena said, which was very astute. So unlike Isis especially, or Hathor, she's like, worship me, you know, I have all of this charisma, right? She just, you know, she's completely uninterested in like personal worship. She like Ninmah, or like, you know, Helen from your readings, or like Mary Magdalene, I'm here to help, you know, like.
Yes.
I'm here to be an example of light.
That's right.
Wisdom, true wisdom.
Yes.
And illuminate all. Yes.
And right now is 1 hour and 11 minutes. 111.
Wonderful.
Here. The next one we're going to go into is the goddess Kali.
Yes, she is so controversial. So I just really wonder what's going on, because I really don't know. Because depends what story you read. You know, you get either either really positive or really dark version of this. So maybe she embodies both realms. I don't know. But maybe I'll tell you the story that comes from ancient scriptures, which are, you know, several thousand years old in Sanskrit. So how did goddess Kali come to life? So goddess Durga was asked, who is this goddess who rides a lion or a tiger. She is a little bit of a warrior goddess, but very benevolent. She was asked to help other gods to slay the demons and malevolent beings that infested planet Earth. And she decided that it's just so much to do, because they are destroying all good on our planet, that she, out of her third eye, created the fierce version of herself. And it was goddess Kali. And in this version, goddess Kali does her job very well. She's like the Terminator. She kills off all the demons. She kills off all the demons, but in this particular story, but there are many other stories, right? In this particular story, she gets so into her rage and into her fury that now she starts to kill off the gods also. She can't stop killing. So at a certain moment, so this is just one story. At a certain moment, she sees God Shiva lying hopelessly on the ground, and she sees his beautiful eyes, and she falls in love with him, and she ends up making love to him, and in this erotic rapture, she comes back to love. So that's one of her stories. Another story is that she is actually a goddess of very, very radical transformation. So basically it means if she forces you to face your shadows. You know, she forces you to face your shadows, and it's brutal. Like, it's a transformational growth. It's a sudden growth. It's not like gradually, you know, have enlightenment, a little bit Satori here, Satori there. It's just enlightenment now, but like, phew, you know, like she cuts your head off. She destroys your ego, and now deal with it, baby. Okay, you transform. You're transformed, but she's also portrayed like, you know, the skull, which is, you know, the destruction, but also resurrection. Skull, very similar to Mary Magdalene symbology sometimes, you know, especially the skull, you know, and resurrection. And on the other hand, so in this fury, she also keeps, now she has this mudra, which is a gesture when she touches the earth, and she said, at the same time as she cuts your head off, which is basically your ego, like, transform now, there is no time, right? She says, do not be afraid. She has the mudra, do not be afraid. You know, it is scary. I am scary. You know, this is not going to be pretty.
Wow, this is so in alignment with what you just shared. It's amazing.
Do not be afraid, right? It's just part of the process, and I'm just speeding up the process that otherwise would take you, I don't know, 10 lifetimes, right? So,
oh my God, you're going to love this because it's so in alignment.
Yes. Kali, incarnated at the frequency of 100. Yes, which is level of worry, you know.
Fear.
Yeah. Was born at the frequency of 100 and vibrated at the frequency of 100 as well. So embodied fully. If viewed the aspect of health through the lens of 30, which is, you know, disgrace and
that's how she's able to slay.
Drifting away from her inner being.
She came for killing, and she did the killing.
Without mercy, right?
Yeah.
No mercy.
No mercy, yes. Finances, 50. Creativity, 100. Relationships, 100. Personal growth, 200.
So that's the
heroic point of view, right? With the idea to break through, I guess, right? To pair it with what you shared. Philanthropy, 100. Intuition, 100. And with the intuition, we have clairaudience at 100. Clairsentience, 50.
Makes sense, because she has to disconnect from her own feeling in her being to do what she had to do.
Totally indifferent. They have no mercy and just go for it, right? Clairvoyance, 100. Claircognizance, 100. Within the intelligence aspect, we have IQ, 310. EQ, 20.
That's a distraction.
SQ, 30.
Ruthless.
So people actually were not being drawn to her. They were running away from her.
Yeah, well, and she's portrayed, you know, she looked horrific vision, right? Like,
right.
Yeah, she's the slayer. So I think to deal with the dark, you have to be there, you know?
Definitely. AQ, 20. Yes.
Adversity. How did she deal with adversity? By killing.
That's right, yeah.
She was a killing machine, basically.
Yeah, she was a killing machine, Yeah.
Indie Joy, how much she enjoyed her role, 94%.
She had a blast.
Ruthless. In the ego, 100%, and 100% of that, the superior version of the ego. In the now, 98%. Integrity, 100%. Integrity to self, 100%. And integrity to others, 100%. So if she said she was going to kill you, she was going to kill you.
Right. I came here to kill, and I'm going to do it. That's right. Yes.
Self-awareness, 100%. Clarity, 100%.
She was a master on a mission.
Aligning with divine purpose and personal purpose at 100%. Just fully aligned. Compassion, 53%. Energy purity, 100%. So she was inviting the 100
and
frequency. Yes, and empathy, 55%. Yes.
And she was in lower dimensions.
Definitely dimensions, probably the first and the second, just to visit it and make a quick U-turn.
That's right. That's right, because this is why she was created, you know. So she was created, but we have to remember, and that's why she's a fascinating goddess, that she was like that, because like no other, there was just so much evil on this planet. We're like apparently infested by all kinds of demons, you know, that wanted to destroy the beautiful creation. But at certain point, you know, the benevolent beings decided that they need just get rid of, you know, there's no.
You got a weapon. She's the weapon.
Yeah. So she was a weapon, and but at the end she is transformed by love. That's why there's this esoteric also version to this, that she was transformed by love, and that's why she's always a goddess of this rapid transformation. So that's why she cuts through everything. Right? So if you want a rapid transformation, you may appeal to her, because she will destroy what needs to be destroyed for you to grow. But you know, often it's drastic, right? It's very
right.
You may not be ready to give up everything like that. Yeah. And she said, well, you have to be ready. I decided you're ready, right? So so very interesting reading. And that's very interesting reading, because many young women are very much associate with Kali, because there's lots of this anger, you know, like we've been pushed to the side, you know, like the Me Too movement and so on, which is in many ways justified, but it's also like fury, pure rage, which is Kali energy. And it's really interesting that women of this generation, of that generation, are really attracted to Kali, you know, which is this goddess of rage and transformation. But she's in rage because transformation is needed.
Yes, and in anger usually serves as a catalyst, you know.
That's right. So
and go into the 175, and then the vanity, and then go into the heroism, the heroic aspect.
She has that in her chart, the 200 in personal growth.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's a transformation part.
That she's causing by creating contrast, right?
Yeah. Sundari is next.
Sundari is a very very interesting goddess. I really love her, and to explain Sundari, I often try to bring this metaphor, or you know, between back to, let's say, to the tarot cards, because Sundari is both represented as empress and as a priestess. She's supposed to be the one that is fully embodied in this reality, yet she's completely connected with spirituality. That's why she's the goddess of of the three worlds, which is both spiritual, you know, intellectual and bodily worlds. So this is how she's being explained. She's also a very sensual goddess, and she's very often portrayed as this voluptuous on Hindu temples, you know, this voluptuous, they call Sundaris, but actually it's almost like incarnations, this voluptuous, beautiful, you know, women. And it's said that in some ways, like Hathor maybe, she was very sensual, because they said when she laughed, her laugh was so sensual that it brought mango trees to blossoms, and they started to bear fruit, you know. It was just too much, even the trees were seduced, right? So let's goddess Sundari. However, and just so this is how she was originally. However, just from an academic point of view, she kind of fell from grace, because now, you know, for example, this kind of shady massage parlors in India and so on are called Sundaris, or beauty products are called Sundaris. So, you know, her power like was diminished. Maybe her power is not diminished, but she's portrayed in a very superficial way in modern times, you know, all about beauty and so on, forgetting that she actually was, it's called Tripura Lalita Sundari, so the one who can play with three realities. The one who can play with different dimensions, and she embodies all of them at the same time. So, you know, it's something to reckon with, and at the same time, very, very seductive.
Well, I think we're going to do justice, resurrect justice for her.
Okay.
So she incarnated at the frequency of 350, which is the frequency of receptivity. This is, as you said, priestess, also knowing to give and receive, right? The receptive. Yeah. And she was born at the same frequency, 350, and she embodied the frequency of 350. Again, this frequency of receptivity. And maybe this is an invitation for, I would say, all of the people to awaken that receptive aspect within all of us, right? Each and every one of us. Health, she viewed through the lens of 350. Finances, 200. So this heroic way of viewing it. Creativity, 400. So she had a creative mind, very analytical. Relationships, 350. Again, receptive. Personal growth, 500. So she was in a state of flow. So that's kind of also your way of saying, when you described that she was in between different worlds, right? Because that's a different dimension, and we'll go into the dimension. Philanthropy, 350. So giving and receiving, again, this receptivity. Intuition, 200. So heroic way of viewing and processing information. And all four aspects of intuition were 200. Her IQ, she perceives through the lens of 200. EQ, 310, which is eager, right? But it was definitely higher, so she relied on that a lot more. SQ, 310, social quotient. And AQ, adversity quotient, was heroic. Now, she enjoyed her role 94%, ego 98%, and out of that, 96% inferior. And maybe that's the part on a very deep subconscious level that all these companies and brands are calling themselves Sundaris, right? They're playing off on the inferior ego. You're not good enough here. Let me build it up for you.
You need lots of makeup and, and
whatever it is to make you feel better. In the now, 89%. Integrity, 98%. Integrity to herself, 100%. Integrity to others, 98%. So also very high. Self-awareness, 97%. So she was mastering her level at that time, right? At that frequency. Clarity, 98%. Alignment with divine purpose, 100%. Alignment with personal purpose, 100%. Compassion and empathy, both 100%. Energy purity, she embodied this receptive frequency of 350 at 100%. And she embodied 51% of the time the fifth dimension. So, the second, I would say fourth dimension, that would be your 200, 400, right, numbers. And then the fifth dimension is the 51%. So, yeah.
So that's very good because, so I'm not surprised. Again, very, very, very good readings, what I know about her, because she was kind of, she was fully embodied, not like I was talking about Uma, but it's almost like, how she actually managed to be here, right? Because she knew the workings of the universe. When Sundari is very much earthly in this way, but she had the ability to move between dimensions. So I think that your readings is actually perfect again.
Good. I'm glad you're getting lots of confirmations too based on research. The next one is Saraswati.
Saraswati. The goddess of knowledge. So in Hindu mythology or Hindu beliefs, she is portrayed always in a very positive way, simply because she's this goddess of wisdom, which I would say very analytical, but also, so she's also good at mathematics, but especially she is the mistress of language, of spoken and written language. So this is her biggest power. And this is when, students nowadays even pray to Saraswati when they have a difficult exam or something, just give me, like I have to know what's going on, right? Give me some knowledge. So, but she's mostly the goddess of speech and the goddess of wisdom, but she also is capable of conveying a divine wisdom. But in many ways, she's associated with intellectual wisdom and with a form of speech.
Beautiful. Saraswati, incarnated at the frequency of 700.
Illuminated.
Was born at the frequency of 700. And her overall frequency was 700.
Wow.
Viewed health at 800, finances 600, creativity 700, personal growth 1000, relationships 700, philanthropy 800, intuition 500, And within intuition, we have clairaudience at 500, clairsentience 800, clairvoyance 500, and claircognizance at 500. Under the intelligence aspect, we have IQ 500, EQ 700, SQ 700, and AQ 500.
Illuminated fully.
Yes.
In the joy, 100%. In the ego, 24%. And 50% of that was the inferior, therefore
Balanced, she's
more balanced, right? In the now, 100%. Integrity, 100%. Integrity to self, 100%. And integrity to others, 100%. Self-awareness, 100%. Clarity, 100%. Alignment with divine purpose and personal purpose at 100%. Compassion, 100%. Empathy, 100%. Energy purity, 100%. And we measured the dimensions, the dimension 10th, though, the 10th dimension. And she was experiencing the 10th dimension 98% of the time.
These are beautiful readings, thank you, because she's actually a goddess that is completely empty of any vanity. You know, like she doesn't have any agenda. So she's like the opposite of Inanna, Isis, or Hathor, you know, and the other goddesses that we're talking about. And when you're giving her reading, so, and she just very freely gives knowledge, you know, you just have to ask. It's almost like Uma, just, you know, as you said, 3 dimensions lower, right? Because you just have to ask and she gives, you know, she's not asking for anything back, you know, so she's there almost like a transmitter of information, right? So this is very beautiful. And she's obviously, because I'm a writer and academic, so she's one of my favorite goddesses, because exactly she's about pure wisdom rather than, you know, intellect just, right? So it's just pure wisdom, and also the power of speech and expressing, being able to give this wisdom, to share this wisdom, right?
Yes,
so beautiful. Yes.
I would call it Saraswati, goddess of wisdom instead of knowledge, you know?
That's right. It's probably better name for her, actually. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. That's beautiful.
Beautiful.
All right. Let's go into the Greek goddesses. Aphrodite. I was like really wanting to read that. This is I was like, okay, let's see what shows up. We never know, but we love the confirmations. Because of course we don't have to.
Goddess Aphrodite has a very beautiful story, and from especially apparently coming from Homer, who wrote, you know, also the Iliad and the Odyssey, that she used to be a very powerful and a very beautiful goddess, but also like Hathor in a way extremely seductive, so she just played with her powers, right? Like, and she made god Zeus, who was the major Greek god, upset many times, because, you know, she made him fall in love with whoever, and then he had to fall in love and get into trouble with his wife, you know, like this is just this kind of play of Greek goddesses and gods, who in my opinion were never very mature. So I just wonder what you say about that.
Okay.
At certain points, what happens, she through some set of circumstances, Zeus somehow managed to make her fall in love with an earthly man, and then she loses her power. So the man gains the power, she loses her power, and she's forced to marry Hephaestus, the, you know, the kind of ugly god who, you know, is kind of workman god, right, for the Greeks, and so on. And she has this beauty, and she has this eros about her, but she is somehow misguided in the way she's using it. So this beauty and this power and this charisma actually disempowers her. That's why in my book, you know, in The Other Goddess, I said she actually reminds me of Marilyn Monroe a lot. You know, like there is this beauty, there is this goddess, like, you know, charisma, how she was shown at least in the films, and yet completely disempowered and not in control of her life. And also, so I just wonder, you know, what you came up with.
Oh, this is so good. It's juicy. So she incarnated at the frequency of 50, indifference. So again, this disconnect.
Yeah.
Born at 50, overall frequency 50. There you go. And 50 is a frequency of when somebody's indifferent, it can be a frequency of manipulation in her case because she incarnated that way.
Yes.
Health, she viewed through the lens of 125, very impulsive. Finances, 50, again, manipulating. Creativity, she created through the lens of 50, again, manipulation. As you shared, she made people just randomly fall in love, get in trouble. Relationships, 50. There you go. She manipulated relationships.
She was a troublemaker.
She was a troublemaker.
Yeah, for sure.
Personal growth, 125. Again, this impulsiveness, right?
Yes.
Philanthropy, 50. Again, manipulated. Intuition, 50. And under 4 aspects of intuition for her, all of them were 50. IQ, intellect, right? The knowledge, she viewed through the lens of 250. EQ, emotional intelligence, 50. So again, disconnected there. SQ, her level of magnetism and her seduction, 500. That was her superpower that she used to lure people in.
Yes.
And AQ is 50. Again, that's the way to disassociate, disconnect, to manipulate, right? She enjoyed her role 100%. She loved it. She was in her ego 100%, and out of that was 100% superior. So definitely vanity was her thing, you know, it was like superior ego, the narcissistic all the way. In the now, 100%, she was fully present for that experience. Integrity, 50%. And out of that, 95%, she was in integrity to self, and to others, 35%. So there you go.
Yeah.
Manipulating her to whatever she was having fun with, whatever, right, she used. Self-awareness, she was very well aware of what she was doing, 94%.
Wow.
Clarity, 100%. Alignment with divine purpose, 100%. She actually came here to play that role.
Okay.
You know? And alignment with personal purpose, 100%. I always say that it's like, you know, the roles we all play, we can't always take anything serious in life because it's like we all get a script, right?
That's right.
And then we're told, okay, you're going to play this role, you're going to play that role. Well, she played the Aphrodite role. She played it really well. And you can't really get mad at the actors who are playing the role because they're there, you know, showing you. Yeah.
You put it really well, Elena, because this is how she is, because she's not malevolent. You know, she really doesn't cause any harm. She doesn't do any good, really, but she brings fun into life, you know. And she basically say, this man and this woman, that would be fun, you know, but she doesn't think about the consequences. But
exactly.
she also did it for herself. And that's why she was always in trouble and completely out of control of her own life.
Yeah.
This impulsiveness, as you said, this impulsiveness.
And she was probably often doing it, like you said, for the sake of fun, her entertainment.
Yes.
Even when she felt that these two are not definitely going to kill each other, but no, yes, get together.
It would be fun to see. Yeah, let's see exciting.
Compassion, 45%. So she didn't care. She literally was there to fulfill her own ego desires, right? Empathy, 57%. Energy, purity, 100%. So she embodied that frequency fully. And had fun, blessed being that. And obviously she was not in the 5th dimension. This is lower dimension. So as you said, very immature, right? Yes. And you can see this actually process of, through all these revelations, there's almost like an evolution process that's happening, right?
Yes. So I love this reading because it is exactly like, it's so high, if we can say it, you know, about like meeting her face to face, because it's exactly how I imagine her and how she is portrayed in Greek mythology. So everybody kind of loves her because you actually cannot treat her seriously, you know, and she is fun and she is gorgeous, but honestly, and so she would say like, I like this God, you know, and I'm going to have an affair with him. Why am I in trouble again? You know, it's like one of his friends that we all have, right? Why am I in trouble again? Well, because you did the same thing again, just for fun. So this is Aphrodite, but, you know, there's nothing bad about her, except that perhaps she's not really responsible, you know.
Well, I mean, she manipulated, right? But she wasn't there to kill, like some other frequency we revealed, like the 20 and 30, right? That are there.
Yeah.
Okay, the next
Yes,
one.
we classified those that vibrate at, let's say, in her case, at 50, incarnated at 50, and was born at 50. We have classified them as like shadow players, but now we decided to change that. And now we call them the awakeners.
The great awakeners.
The great awakeners, you know, because by creating contrast, there's a force people in a way, if they're open, but to embody their own God energy, right? And to seek a transformational experience.
Yes.
Because of the contrast, right? The contrast already.
She's here to play with you, for you to figure out, are you going to play that game of manipulation, or are you here to really stand fully in your whatever it is you're here to be?
That's right. Because if you want to play, I can distract you. Right?
Okay. Exactly.
Yes.
But it will take you off your path, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Knowing what we don't want helps us to know what we do want, right?
That's right.
So Athena, goddess of wisdom and war. That's
right. So Athena is a very interesting goddess because in my mind, because I like to compare goddesses from different traditions, she's like, in a way, like Saraswati, but few levels lower. And also she lost her almost this transcendental aspect, you know, the completely divine aspect. I'm just here, you ask, I give knowledge. So her knowledge is very intellectual, and she's also knowledge of war. So she's also not a goddess of technologies. So for example, like nowadays we live in times of technologies, which almost loses the side of humanity, like transhumanism, you know, like cyborgs and so on.
Oh, wow. This is amazing because it's so on point.
Oh, really? So and because of that, so she's this goddess of wisdom, and she's a woman gender-wise, right? A goddess, but she really has no feminine qualities, really, you know. So it's the feminine qualities which are associated with, you know, compassion or, you know, empathy. She really doesn't have it. In Greek mythology, she uses just her mind, you know, like, okay, so she's very kind of, she likes to strategize. She is a strategizer.
Calculative.
Yeah. Very analytical, scientific.
Very analytical scientist. Like a scientist who really, what's needed at the moment, don't worry about the consequences.
Oh my God, this is so on point.
Strategist.
Totally.
She incarnated at the frequency of 200 and was born at the frequency of 200.
Heroic, very heroic.
Right? And vibrated at the frequency of 200. Viewed health at 200, finances 50, creativity 100.
So that's creating the war, right? That's her.
Technology,
Yeah, but we'll go in technology. That's going to be IQ.
Relationships 150.
So it's anger.
Personal growth.
Rage.
Anger, rage, yes. Personal growth 200. Philanthropy 200. Intuition 200. And then under intuition we have clairaudience at 200, clairsentience 100, clairvoyance 200, and claircognizance 150.
Rage. So her knowing is based on rage.
Right. And then linked with this 100 under creativity, that's can make her a very, you know, like a
combative.
Warrior.
Warrior.
Yes. Ruthless warrior.
Yeah, ready for combat.
In intelligence aspect, we have IQ at 400.
That's your researcher. Actually, you know, we've read a lot of people, and the average IQ for a human being that we've read is between 200 and 250. So this is a very unusual frequency. Albert Einstein was 499 on that scale. So just people can grasp that. So based on what you said, absolutely, she has the scientist, investigator mindset.
Yes.
Information driven.
She can see the whole picture, you know? Very broad perspective. EQ 20.
There you go.
SQ 500.
It's also magnetic.
Right.
Okay. Well, she was a goddess, right?
AQ 20.
Yeah.
Now, in the joy, 88%. In the ego, 100%. And 100% of that was the superior.
Mm-hmm.
In the now, 98%. Integrity, 100%. Integrity to self, 100%. And integrity to others, 100%. Self-awareness, 100%. Clarity, 100%. Alignment with divine purpose, 100%. Alignment with personal purpose, 97%. Compassion, 40%. Empathy, 67%. That matches what you described, right? You said no compassion, no empathy, right? Energy purity, 66%. And was 0% under the fifth dimension. You know, she was experiencing more the second and third dimension.
That's exactly what actually mythology says, because for example, if Aphrodite or even Hathor, worship me because I am sexy, or Aphrodite worship me because I'm beautiful and I want to play, Aphrodite would be like, worship me because I'm smarter than you are, or I'm not afraid of you because I'm smarter than you are, and I can produce technology that will destroy you, right? So, but she still was about, I want to be worshipped, and you better worship me because there are consequences. Right?
All right. Next one is Artemis.
Artemis, yes. So she is sometimes a very beloved goddess, although she's also kind of controversial, because she, in Greek mythology, and we have to remember it in context of the times, which was very masculine society, especially in Greece at the time, especially in Athens, right? Because Sparta was a little bit different, but in this part of Greece. So she was the first fully independent goddess. So she's called goddess of the woods, and later by the Romans, she was called goddess of the hunt, but she was not that for the Greeks. She was just, she left the Olympus, where the other Greek gods lived, because she says it's really boring, all of this playing and all of this manipulating people. I just want to be myself. I just want to go to the woods and be very independent. And she went there, and she had nymphs and other young women and semi-goddesses that were attending to her. So she was still a goddess, meaning she was still being worshipped and so on. She valued her independence more than everything else, but it seems that she really had disliked men. And although she was, in fact, when one hunter who was in the forest saw her bathing in the stream, she actually executed him right away. Like, how do you dare to even look at me? Mm-hmm. At the same time, she was not sexual, so there are no any sexual connotations. So, for example, it's not that she preferred women, or you know what I mean? Like, she just had completely no interest in this kind of form of sexuality or sensuality. She wanted to be independent, and if anybody encroached on her independence, there was a price.
Also on point in many ways. So let's dive into it. She incarnated at the frequency of 50. Again, this disassociation, right? Born at the frequency of 50, and she embodied 50. Her overall frequency was 50. She viewed health through the lens of 50, finances 50, creativity 125. So she had a lot impulsive desires, right? And maybe, as you said, she wanted to be independent. So that was, and she wanted to be attended to. Mm-hmm. Relationships, very much in alignment with the story that you just shared. Of course, we have no idea about these stories. Is 30, and 30 is disgrace.
Yeah.
Yeah. Personal growth 175. So for her, it was all about vanity. Her personal growth was linked to vanity, and as you said, she had all these people tending to her. Yes. Philanthropy 50, intuition 50, and all four aspects under intuition are 50. IQ, she viewed through the lens of 200. EQ, 50, so disconnected from emotionally.
Yes.
SQ 500, again, she had this goddess again, magnetic presence, and AQ 50. She enjoyed her role 96%, ego 100%, and 100% superior. So that's also very much in alignment with the story that you shared. Who are you to look at me? So very much a narcissist, right? In the now, 100%. Integrity, 63%. In integrity to herself, 100%. Integrity to others, 40%.
Yes.
Self-awareness, 97%. So she was very aware what she was doing. Clarity, 98%. Alignment with divine purpose, 96%. So there was something that she still didn't fully achieve, right? Alignment with personal purpose, 100%. Compassion, 39%. So not very compassionate. Empathy, 53%, energy purity, 100%. So she embodied that 50 frequency at 100%. And of course, that she existed in lower realms.
Yes.
She's the goddess of the lower realms. I would call her a goddess of underworld, actually, those frequencies.
Oh, really? Because so that's very interesting. But the readings really confirm what mythology says about her, because she was completely independent, but it was at the price of having basically no emotions. My independence is so important to me that nothing else or nobody else matters, right? Like, even if I, like, if you have to kill this man, that's okay, because he infringed somehow on my privacy and my independence, and I do not wish to be observed. So, and that's it, like that, that's, right? No regrets.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. When we were reading this, I couldn't wait. Of course, we both couldn't wait to hear your feedback, because you're the historian in this. It's just mind-blowing, that basically, because our biofield, and we always talk about it, is a record keeper of everything, right? It's not just written in the books, it's written in the field itself. And it just being able to retract this information and share it, and then having your, of course, area of expertise to where it just comes together so beautifully. I love it.
But it's amazing that you can read it, that you have the technology or methodology, that you have access to these records, right? Because it's easier to read it from books, because we are schooled in this, but what you're doing is in a way much more profound, right? Because you go straight to the source, quite straight to the source.
Yeah, it gives you direction. The numbers give direction, and then for someone like you that's been in this area for so long, I'm sure you're having a lot of aha moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I love it.
And the last one for goddess episode, is Circe.
Circe, goddess of lower forms of magic.
That's right. So Circe or Circe, depends who pronounces it and how they want to, in which mythology, right? Because there's Greek and Roman mythology. So she is the goddess that in the Odyssey turns Odysseus' companions into pigs, because she could. And she wanted, she lives on a beautiful island in Greece, which is, a nice place to have, right? And she's attended by these beautiful nymphs, who serve her, a little bit like Artemis, except that she is very sensual. She likes to have fun, unlike Artemis. And, and she will use any way of getting this fun, So when Odysseus arrived from his, tired from his journey with his companions after they conquered Troy, and somewhere on the way, they happened to stop on this beautiful Greek island. She decided, she saw this man coming, and she said, oh, I like Odysseus. He's a handsome man and he's a leader, but I really do not care about these other guys. So, oops, turn them into pigs and put them in a hovel with her own pigs, right? So, because, they can be on the way. And then Odysseus comes and she seduces him, but he's also kind of in awe of her, because he says, Goddess Circe, what can I do so you can, bring my man back? And she says, well, let me think, right? And she says, okay, I think you should sleep with me for a year. You should serve me and please me for a year. I will take a good care of you. And, you have everything you want. and and she bathes him, she treats him well, but he's like a toy boy. Right? This is his toy boy. And then she said, and if I'm pleased, you can get your man back. And this is what happened. And after a year or so, Odysseus says, okay, the time has passed, we had fun, and are you willing to bring my man back to human form? And then she said, she thought about it, and she says, yeah, I'm pleased with you, right? With your performance. You can have your man back, right? So she turns them back into a human form. But very often, so this is in Odyssey, she's associated with lower magic. So she basically gets what she wants by playing with natural elements. So this is the kind of what is called lower magic, which means you have to take away something from someone so you can get it, for example, or you have to manipulate natural elements and then you get what you want. So this is what Circe really was.
Yes. Manipulate the elements.
Manipulate.
Oh yeah, wait till
magic.
Actually, there's going to be a very clear confirmation about this, right?
Oh yes. Excuse me. She incarnated at the frequency of 30.
Wow.
Was born at the frequency of 30 and vibrated at the frequency of 30 as well. Yes, which is the level of disgrace. Viewed health at 30, finances 20, that is the level of humiliation or destruction. Creativity 20, relationships 30, personal growth 30, philanthropy 30, intuition 100. And with an intuition, we have clairaudience at 100, clairsentience 50, clairvoyance 100, and claircognizance 100. Under the intelligence aspect, we have IQ at 200, EQ 30, SQ 500, AQ 20. Indie Joy, take a guess.
100%?
She's
Yes.
like, the joke is on you. I'm having fun.
I love that. Yeah.
In the ego, 100%. And 100% of that was the superior version of the ego.
Full-blown narcissist.
In the now, she was fully present 100% of the time. Integrity, 100%. Integrity to self, 100%. So fully loyal to her truth.
Yes.
But integrity to others, a whole nother story. 6%.
Oh.
That makes sense.
So funny, actually. Yeah.
Right?
How could you go and be a pig, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
She probably just buried them somewhere and brought some pigs and said that those were his men,
Could be.
Right. Self-awareness, 100%. Clarity, 100%. Alignment with divine purpose and personal purpose at 100%. Compassion, 36%. Empathy, 56%. Energy purity, 100%. So she was embodying the level of 30.
That's the goddess of underworld.
Disgrace to the fullest. And of course, at that level, I don't think she was experiencing anything higher than the first dimension,
Yes.
Maybe the second peaking, but that was it.
So that exactly confirms, but again, she had the charisma because Odysseus, who was, very shrewd man, even he was, and she did these awful things to his man, even he was in awe of her,
right.
Wow.
He was lured in by her.
The SQ.
Wow, you're like, goddess, all right? But so like other Greek goddesses, and gods, because it goes for both, I always thought about them like spoiled celebrities. You know, they had all the powers, they had all the beauties, but they actually had very little to contribute because they could, but it didn't come to their minds that maybe we should help someone, or, you know,
Right.
they were just playing the game and enjoying the game of being.
Some of them just came for very selfish purposes, you know?
Yes, that's right. That's right. Just selfish and trying to have some fun. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Like the rest of humanity.
Well, not at that level, but yeah. But it's an invitation, I would say, for humanity to have more fun.
Yes. No.
Yes. Maybe it was their role, you know. It's just, you know, don't be so serious, right? Like enjoy this embodiment, right?
Yes.
So maybe that was their role.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I said the rest of humanity, just to clarify. We're gonna post this, go public. I meant as of experiencing life at different degrees, you know, and based on the role they were here to play. So, like you said, let's not take life so seriously, you know.
That's right. That's right. So it could be, you know, maybe it was the divine play in a way, right? Then it was the divine play. But, you know, what is really interesting from all of these readings for me, that it really confirms what mythologists said, you know, and sometimes when mythologists were kind of shady or contradictory, it kind of clarified this for me as well, right? Because some goddesses like Isis, you know, it was not clear, good or bad. Sometimes Sophia got a bad rap, you know, because of her fall, when I think let's focus what happened after the fall, you're right, like that, and so on. And Kali, you know, it's interesting that she's liked so much by a particular generation of women, and which she embodies this fury and the need for change, right? So it's really wonderful. I think your technology is really wonderful, you know, the readings, because you know, they go deeper to what, or maybe they confirm in many ways what mythology said, or they clarify certain things. So I'm really grateful. Thank you.
That's wonderful.
It's wonderful. You're so welcome, and thank you. This is so much fun.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it?
And now we're going to meet for the second episode. So we'll be meeting again for the second episode. So look forward to seeing you again. And then we'll post, of course, the link on how people can find you. So that will be posted. Make sure that for those of you that are joining us, that you look at the link below to connect to Joanna.
Yes, so you can order your books too.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. So that's the other goddess. So when I actually, so if someone wants to delve more into it in a more kind of, I try to make it really entertaining, you know, the way we are doing it now. So they can check it out there as well in the other goddess.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Elena and Alejandro. It was a great pleasure speaking to you.
Thank
you, Joanna.